So the Skylark, we have a Skylark here, and what's that based on?
So the Skylark, you know that I love classic amps, and we don't necessarily copy anything. Sometimes we'll take a concept and try to make it our
Inspired
own.
by.
So the Skylark is really based on small blackface reverb amps. Could be, there's some Princeton in there, there's some blackface deluxe. You know, when we first introduced it, we talked about the Harvard, which is a tweed amp, but it's a 2.6V6 fixed bias amp, and it shares some of that part of it. You know, so you know, they're kind of sometimes I if I could call myself an artist, I think of myself as a collage artist, where you bring different things together, which sounds easy, and but it's sometimes really tough to get simple elements of different amps to actually be happy with each other and to make good sounds through the whole range. We attempt to make, you know, every bit of this knob useful. Anyway, that can be a challenge.
And unlike little tiny amps too, you have the mid-range control, the presence control, you have reverb on there, so it's actually an expanded.
Right, a kind of a full-featured, super useful amp. There's a high-low gain switch, which is not high gain, but it's more pumped-up blackface sound. Built-in attenuator, which
is very useful.
Seems essential to me these days.
These days, it's essential to have an amp that goes down to low wattage. You can play at home.
Right.
Not interrupt people upstairs. And then because we have it here now, I have the serial number 1 of the Telstar, and you sent that to me. Thank you very much. And we're not selling it so people can try it. But tell me how the Telstar came about.
I will. I want to return to one thing briefly here on the attenuator, and how it has to do with pedals. You know, these days I have pedals, you have pedals, we all love pedals, most of us. But you know, sometimes, let's say you're playing at home, and if you didn't have an attenuator, and you know, you're trying to keep it sane, and you had your volume so low on your amp, sometimes that doesn't sound great when a pedal's hitting it.
Right.
It sounds so much better when you can advance the volume, at least, you know, to like 10 or 11 o'clock on the dial. And that's when I play at home, the attenuator, sometimes I use that just so I can crank the amp a bit so it interfaces with my pedals better. Yeah, more like a live setting, really, where you'd be turned up.
Right.
That's something that works for me.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. And just because it's the only 2 amps we have in stock, because you're on back order here. This is the Telstar, which is a beautifully simple design. And I'm going to do this because we're using video.
Oh yeah.
And point out.
You move well.
Yeah, look at this. So we have just the simple volume, tone, reverb, and I'm queuing you up.
Yeah, that's right. So this amp, you know, we talked about the Skylark here, which has a lot of blackface vibe to it. This is more of a tweed-based amp. And, you know, there's a switch here with 53 and 58, and that's referring to how the tone sections, which in the tweed amp, those amps were very simple, but they did evolve over that time. At the very end of the 50s, the tweeds kind of turned into Marshalls, basically, with our scooped mid-range that we're used to. But before that, you had the single tone knob, which in a way filtered the top end, but it also changed the mid-range as you move it.
Yeah.
Not in the way a blackface amp does with a big scoop, but just more of a hollow sound sometimes.
Yes.
So 53 is much more, in a way it's sweet, but it's also more in your face sounding. So this is the tone section in 53 is in a way doing the least. It's still very active, but it's letting all the mid-range through.
Got it.
Of the guitar. And that's great for overdrive, actually. Classic tweed overdrive. 50, when we go up here to 58, there's more treble bite, and this is kind of how they evolved. More treble bite and a little bit more scoop, not to the extent of the blackface, but more bright.
More bright.
More bright and more gain. So that's what happens here.
Yeah.
Both overdrive really well. The 53 I like for kind of a smooth, rounder overdrive, and then the 58 to get almost a cutting, you know, before Marshall vibe. And then you've got the attenuator. This This attenuator is a bit different. It starts at full power and then goes down. I almost think of this more as a stage style attenuator because it doesn't have the fine range at the very bottom.
Yes.
It still has a lot of control at home, but not to the extent of some of our other amps, which are, we're really thinking about at-home use with those attenuators.
Right.
This one is great on stage because you can just back it off a little bit to where you want to push the front end and not blow up the house.
Right, right. And then last, the Lean and Lush.
So the Lean and Lush is, you know, the Tweed amps, they have this primitive tone control.
Yes.
But the bass isn't as full on those typically because in some ways it's almost an illusion because there's so much more mid-range left in the sound. The bass and the treble don't seem to be kind of big like you hear in a later amp.
Yeah.
So, but the Lean and the Lush, when it's on Lush, is we try to pump up the bass, make it more full,
Lush is more bass.
Lush is more bass, and then Lean just trims it out. And Lean works great when you're really cranking the amp because low end can make your amp very flubby and non-distinct, and also can create sometimes some strange artifacts in the overdrive if you have too much low end when you really crank it. So Lean is fantastic as you advance that volume to keep everything locked in.
Cool.
And sounding good, you know.
Great. Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well,
you know,
that's a Telstar, and we've got other stuff coming, and we won't get into the other stuff because we have the Mercury V and the Super B coming, and this is Steve Carr, and we're going to let you guys go at that because we had to stop him, and all his handlers are out here behind us, like going, "Let's go, you know. And so his entourage is telling him to get back on the private chopper, which is on the roof. And we're going to let you go. You can hear it. Yeah.
The rented chopper that we got from the airport.
Hold an old guitar as we do this.
Yeah, thanks. And remember, if you write in quickly, there's a chance I could go home with this.
Send your donations.